right. Hello out there. Well, I guess I'll just have to sit tall. My name is Jennifer Baker, and I work in student health. I'm a health educator, and I also work with a group of students called Project Hope, and that stands for Helping Others Through Peer Education. So that's something that all of you could learn or find out more about when you come to campus. What I want to talk a little bit about today is alcohol and drug use. And as students in college and as basically anywhere in our culture, our society, you will either come in contact with or have choices that have to do with basically your alcohol behavior or your choices around drug use. And there are some things out there that may be very obvious, and there's other information that I'm going to talk a little bit about today that you may not have heard before. So sometimes it's a little surprising when I give presentations to students or I talk with different groups, some of the things that they don't know, but they maybe have learned through some consequences and the choices that they've made, and they're not sure why these things are happening to them, but we can sort of go through some things together. Now, a lot of people are familiar with blood alcohol content, BAC, and BAC is a measure of how much alcohol has gone into your bloodstream, and most likely you've heard of it because in California the legal limit for BAC is 0.08. So if you are 21, you can drive after drinking legally if your BAC is under 0.08. If you are under 21, there is no legal limit, meaning it's zero tolerance, and if there is any alcohol in your bloodstream, you are driving drunk, and you will be dealt with for that. But 0.08 and 0.08 and above is the legal limit, and the reason for that is that at 0.08 we start to see a number of things. We start to see reaction time increasing. We start to see impairment of vision and other senses, like your hearing is not as good, your vision is not as good. We also see that your judgment is impaired. And we know that in other ways when we're drinking, that our judgment may be impaired, and you may see that in the types of people that start to become funny or the person who starts to become attractive. But in driving a car, this is particularly a problem, especially when you're putting other people at risk. So a lot of times in college, people start to experiment with that, and they're not really sure, based on their alcohol use, what their limit is. They don't know how many drinks it takes. So it's actually not that complicated. There is equivalence to alcohol that we can go through, and basically we know that 12 ounces of beer. Now, this is a little bit general because there are different strengths of beer, there are different strengths of wine, there's different proofs of hard liquor, but 12 ounces of beer is equal to about 5 or 6 ounces of wine, and that is equal to about 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 ounces of hard liquor. So all of those are equal in the amount of alcohol that they have in them, and the amount of alcohol or the increase in your BAC. So all of those, each of those, the 12 ounces of beer, the 5 to 6 ounces of wine, or the 1 1/2 ounces of hard liquor will each make your BAC increase about 0.03 to 0.04. And so you can see about 0.03 to 0.04, if you have 2 drinks in an hour, it takes about an hour for your body to process 1 drink, you could be at the legal limit. Now, the other things that are going to affect your BAC is your weight. So if you're a very small male or female, but if you're a very small female, for instance, and your BAC is going to go up about 0.04 instead of the 0.03. So your BAC, you're about at your limit, and you're going to be intoxicated. You're not going to be able to drive with 2 drinks in your system. The other things that affect our BAC, or the amount of alcohol that's entering our blood when we drink, are things like food. Have we been eating food? Is it going straight into our bloodstream? Some girls in particular like the alcohol diet, so we don't have to eat. We save our calories for drinking. So yeah, that's a good way to get it really hard at first, but they might find that you really feel it the next day as well, and certainly your BAC is going to go up a lot faster. You will also find women in particular that you do get drunk faster, and the reason for that is that women tend to have more body fat than men do. So if you have a woman and a man the exact same size, women have more body fat, so that means they sort of have a smaller container for the alcohol to circulate in, because alcohol is water soluble. So you actually have less space for the alcohol to circulate in your body, so your blood alcohol content is actually going up higher than a man's is in the same amount of time. So we do see that if a woman and a man are drinking together, she is likely to get more drunk, and we're likely to have problems or be at increased risk, like Elena was talking about, for issues that are related to violence, for sexual assault, and issues that are maybe begin to get out of our control. Some of the other things beyond drinking and driving that get beyond our control are things like our bodies. So we're drinking, and maybe binge drinking occurs. So binge drinking is defined as more than 4 drinks for a woman or more than 5 drinks for a male. And that is sometimes surprising to students because it doesn't sound like maybe that big a deal. But binge drinking is labeled that because after that point, you are actually at 4 or 5 drinks, you're actually getting to the point, depending on the amount of time that you've been drinking and the amount of food in your stomach, that you're putting yourself at the risk for alcohol poisoning. So alcohol poisoning starts more or less when your BAC is about 0.16, 0.18, you're getting up to the high teens. And the symptoms of alcohol poisoning start with vomiting. You're going to move on to things like unconsciousness or trouble waking up. So your friend that you've been trying to wake up and they're so sleepy and they just want to go back to sleep. Definitely you don't want to allow that. You don't want to just let them sleep it off, leave them alone. They probably maybe have rugged breathing or ragged breathing, irregular breathing, slow breathing, no breathing. Maybe their skin looks really strange, like it's clammy or it's blue or it's really, really pale. That's a really bad sign. So all of these signs or all of these symptoms are things that really mean that you need to get help. And especially, all of those signs by themselves mean that you need to get help. But if the person has been taking other drugs, maybe they're on prescription meds that they should or should not be on, but whatever the case is with other substances they've been using, you need to call 911. You need to get help, and you need to tell the paramedics about these other medications they've been using, that you need to tell them how much they've been drinking, and you need to stay with your friend until they have appropriate medical attention. We've all heard about, maybe deaths or occasions. Maybe we've heard about, so-and-so, they just puked all the next day too, and blah, 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 and they were fine, and that seems, like, well, that kind of sucked, but that's okay. That's not okay. It's really your responsibility, as our past 2 speakers were talking about. It is really your responsibility to be aware of your environment. It's really your responsibility to be the person who gets help, who calls 911, who gets the proper attention, who stays with the friend, rolls them to their side, and waits. And hopefully maybe has a conversation with them the next day. And if you're, if you have a roommate, if you have a friend, if you know someone that has a drinking problem or who, just seems to be doing this a lot or, maybe you were wondering why you're drinking so much, or the crowd that you're with is drinking so much. There are services on campus. There's services in the community. At Student Health, we have personal counselors. We have health educators that are available to talk with you. And we have personal counselors who are specifically trained in alcohol use and alcoholism. And also in drug abuse. So there are very skilled, highly trained people out there who definitely understand what you're going through, who've been there themselves, and can give you answers, basically, in detail of ways that you can change your life or make better choices or just reduce your risk. As far as club drugs and some of the other things you'll see out there, club drugs is a bit of a broad category. It refers to things we see out there like ecstasy, roofies. Roofies and GHB are drugs that are sometimes used recreationally. They're sometimes made by people to some extent in their homes. They're sometimes, gotten off the street or Mexico, but they are they're a relaxant versus or depressant versus ecstasy, which is a stimulant. Roofies and GHB are often used or sometimes used in sexual assault or for perpetrators of sexual assault. And we also have things like, ketamines and meth that are also considered club drugs, and LSD. And all of these drugs have risks to them. And they may be given to you by your friends, that you may experiment with them or see them in very casual settings, and they may seem, really just kind of, not risky, not something to be worried about. But they do all have risks. And one of the risks that is most worrisome is that there really is no control. You have no idea where these substances are coming from, who made them, what's in them. They could be mixed with other things that you have no idea the potency. And you're really going in blind. They also have a number of side effects, and they don't last. You take X at a club, you have no idea, that night it's over with, I move on with my life. Up to a week afterwards, you could still be experiencing side effects, things like dizziness and headaches, things like depression, confusion, anxiety, paranoia, not stuff that you want to be going back and trying to, work at class and going on with your life and still dealing with some symptoms of, a pretty strange experience, and you have no idea what you've taken. So, even when it's, your next door neighbor, your friend who's maybe hooking you up with these things, they don't know where they've gotten them either. And it's the same with prescription drugs, which are now, after marijuana, the number one form, the second form of drug use in the country, so marijuana being the first. But prescription drugs are a rampant form of drug use, and this means that they're being used illegally, so they're not being used by the person, either the person who they're being prescribed to is not using them for the purpose, or they're not being used by that person. So they can be very harmful, very addictive, and they have, since 1995, so in the last decade, the increase in hospital visits or emergency visits has increased 163%. Based on prescription drugs. So it's not like, oh man, I'm really dragging because now I have to get off, this medicine, that I got hooked to. It's like a lot of people ending up in the emergency room and really hurting. So I just really encourage you to get the facts, to get answers, to seek help, and to talk with someone you trust. There's a lot of information available on our website. If you link to Student Health Services website from the City College website, which you're already on, then you can find a lot of good web pages that have sources that you can trust. So thank you.